What do you say to a mother who has just lost her child? How do you comfort a man who has spent years in prison for a crime he didn't commit? What words could possibly make sense to someone lying in a hospital bed asking why their body is failing them? These are not hypothetical questions. They are the quiet cries of real people, echoed in hospital rooms, war zones, courtrooms, and behind closed doors every single day. And behind each cry is one question that haunts the human heart. Why does God allow pain? We live in a world where suffering is inescapable. It knocks on every door, whether we are rich or poor, faithful or doubting, young or old. And when it does, it often leaves us with more questions than answers. If God is all-powerful and all-loving, why would He not stop it? Why would a good God allow such brokenness, injustice, and sorrow to exist? Today, I want to walk with you through that question, not with easy answers or shallow comfort, but with a deeper understanding of what pain might mean, what it might shape within us, and most importantly, what it reveals about the heart of God Himself. The question of why God allows pain immediately suggests that we believe something is wrong with the world. When a child suffers, when a tragedy strikes, when injustice prevails, we instinctively respond with anger, sadness, or protest. These responses are not just emotional reflexes, they are deeply moral reactions. We don't just feel bad, we believe something has gone wrong. In doing so, we reveal that we are measuring our experience against an invisible standard of how things ought to be. That standard implies the existence of a moral framework, one that gives meaning to words like good, evil, right, and wrong. Without that framework, the concept of pain being wrong or unjust loses its meaning entirely. Think about the question itself. Why would a loving God allow suffering? It presumes that love is a virtue, that suffering is a violation of some moral ideal, and that justice should exist. But where do those ideas come from? If we are merely accidental combinations of molecules shaped by impersonal evolutionary forces, then suffering is just part of a blind process. There's no ought to it, it just is. In a universe without God, what reason do we have to believe that any suffering is truly unjust? If we say it's wrong for children to starve or for people to be oppressed, we are saying that some things are objectively wrong, not just personally unpleasant. That sense of objective wrongness demands a foundation that lies outside of human opinion. Moral outrage over suffering, then, is not evidence against God. It's evidence that we are moral beings living in a morally ordered universe. Our ability to even recognize something as evil or painful in a moral sense points us toward a lawgiver. Just as we recognize a crooked line because we have some idea of a straight one, we recognize evil because we have some internal concept of what good should look like. This raises the question, if there is no God, where did this idea of good and evil come from? People often say, if God is good, why is there evil? But the very idea of evil being a problem assumes that good is real and meaningful, and that there's a standard to compare both. If suffering were merely biological, we might feel discomfort, but we wouldn't call it a tragedy. The fact that we do suggests that we are not just physical beings reacting to stimuli. We are moral agents with a sense of justice, compassion, and truth. In this light, pain doesn't point away from God, it points us directly to Him. It opens up the deeper question, not of why we suffer, but of how we even know that suffering is wrong. The moment we declare pain to be a problem, we admit, whether consciously or not, that there is a higher standard by which pain should be judged, and that standard by its very nature suggests the reality of a moral creator. When we ask why God allows pain, one of the central aspects that must be considered is the reality of human freedom. The ability to choose freely is a powerful gift. It is this freedom that allows us to love, to create, to pursue truth and beauty. to build relationships, and to form meaningful lives. But the very same freedom also opens the door to evil, to cruelty, to betrayal, and ultimately to pain. Without freedom, these things could not exist, but neither could love or goodness in any real, meaningful sense. A world without free will might avoid some suffering, but it would also be devoid of dignity, responsibility, and genuine moral experience. Consider the alternative, a world where every human thought, action, or choice is controlled or predetermined. In such a world, people could not choose to hate, but they could not choose to love either. If a child tells a mother, "I love you," but was programmed to do so, that love becomes hollow. What makes love beautiful is that it is chosen freely, even when it comes at a cost. What gives virtue its value is the possibility that one could have chosen otherwise. Freedom is the soil in which both good and evil can grow. If we remove the possibility of evil by removing freedom, we also remove the possibility of genuine goodness. Much of the suffering we see in the world comes from the misuse of this freedom. Wars, abuse, injustice, corruption, betrayal, these are not random acts of nature, but conscious decisions made by individuals. And though it might seem that God should intervene to stop all evil choices, doing so would mean continually overriding human will. If every evil act were stopped before it occurred, freedom would become an illusion. We would live in a world where people only appear to have choice, while in reality, every harmful or wrong decision is forcibly prevented. That is not freedom. It is manipulation disguised as liberty. Some may argue that God could have created a world where everyone always chooses good, but to always choose good and to never choose evil must be an authentic process, not the result of programming. If goodness is hardwired and inevitable, it ceases to be moral. Virtue has meaning only when it is a real option among alternatives. Freedom means risk, and the risk includes the reality of pain. This risk is not a flaw in creation. It is the very condition for meaningful moral life. God, in granting us free will, gives us the highest form of respect, the ability to choose for ourselves, even when those choices lead to suffering. He does not force love or goodness upon us, He invites it. The pain that results from human choices, then, is not the result of God's absence, but of His refusal to strip us of our human dignity and responsibility. In this way, freedom becomes both the cause of pain and the possibility of love. Pain is one of the most effective teachers in the human experience. While we often seek comfort and ease, it is usually through suffering that the deepest parts of our character are formed. Pain has the strange ability to strip away the superficial and reveal what is lasting and true. In times of struggle, we are forced to confront who we are, what we believe, and where our hope truly lies. The comforts of life rarely provoke reflection, but pain almost always does. It demands our attention, challenges our assumptions, and often becomes the very thing that shapes us into who we were meant to be. Throughout history and personal stories, we see how pain refines people. The person who has endured loss often becomes more compassionate toward the suffering of others. The one who has faced failure gains humility. The one who has walked through darkness and emerged with faith develops a depth of soul that cannot be manufactured in comfort. Suffering has the capacity to expand the heart, sharpen the mind, and forge the will. It is through pain that we learn endurance, patience, empathy, and strength. These virtues are not picked up lightly. They are often born out of necessity through long and difficult journeys. In many cases, pain also redirects. People who once chased empty ambitions often find, through suffering, a renewed sense of purpose. Priorities shift. What once seemed important fades into the background and new clarity emerges. Pain has the power to break illusions and reveal truth. It can awaken a sense of dependence on something greater than ourselves. In the quiet spaces of grief or hardship, many find a deeper connection to God, a richer understanding of life, and a great appreciation for love, time, and relationships. The idea that pain can be redemptive does not make it easy to bear, but it does give it meaning. When we believe that our suffering is not wasted, we begin to look at it differently. It is not merely an obstacle to happiness, but a path to maturity. We may not understand why a particular trial comes, and we may never get the answers we seek, but we can still trust that pain can be used to shape something beautiful within us. This is not blind optimism, but a recognition that growth often comes through the very things we try hardest to avoid. There are countless testimonies of people who, after suffering greatly, would not erase their pain because of what it produced in them. They came out different, not in spite of their suffering, but because of it. It forged resilience, cultivated empathy, and gave birth to wisdom. This does not glorify pain, nor does it diminish its difficulty. But it acknowledges that pain, though bitter, can become a vessel for transformation. In a world where suffering is inescapable, this understanding allows us to endure with hope, knowing that even our deepest wounds can bear fruit that lasts. One of the most profound truths in the Christian understanding of pain is that God is not distant or indifferent to human suffering. It is easy to imagine a God who created the world and then left it to run its course, untouched by the pain and struggles of his creation. But the Christian story presents something entirely different, a God who steps into the world not just to observe suffering, but to experience it personally. This changes the way we think about pain. It is not just something allowed by God, it is something he has willingly entered into. In the person of Jesus, God takes on human form and lives among us. He is not born into luxury or comfort, but into poverty, obscurity, and vulnerability. His life is marked by rejection, misunderstanding, betrayal, physical pain, and ultimately death. This is not the story of a distant deity sitting on a throne, issuing commands from the safety of heaven. It is the story of a God who chooses to walk the same road we walk, to feel what we feel, and to suffer what we suffer. When Jesus weeps at the tomb of Lazarus, when he cries out in agony in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he is nailed to a cross, these moments show that God is not removed from human pain. He knows it from the inside. This reality gives a different meaning to suffering. Pain is no longer just something to endure or escape. It becomes something that God himself has participated in. And because of that, pain is not meaningless. In the cross, suffering and love meet. The greatest act of redemption in human history comes through suffering. What looks like defeat, Jesus dying in agony, becomes the very source of hope for the world. This does not remove pain from our lives, but it does mean that pain can be redeemed. It can serve a greater purpose because it has already done so in the life and death of Christ. When people suffer, one of the most painful feelings is the sense of isolation. The thought that no one understands, that no one sees or cares, can be crushing. But in the Christian view, God sees, God knows, and God cares, not as an outsider, but as one who has borne the weight of suffering himself. He does not offer platitudes from afar. He offers his presence. He offers wounds that match ours. He offers the reassurance that even in the darkest moments, we are not alone. This kind of identification with human suffering gives hope. It means our pain is not ignored, not wasted, and not forgotten. It means we can cry out in our suffering and know that God hears with understanding. The presence of pain in the world is still difficult to bear, but the presence of a suffering God transforms the experience. It tells us that pain does not have the final word, and that even in suffering, we are held by a God who has walked that road before us. When we face pain and suffering, our natural instinct is to seek immediate relief and understanding. We want to know why something is happening and how it can be stopped. But often pain resists simple explanations. The human perspective is limited. We see only a fragment of the full picture. What seems senseless or cruel in the moment may, in the light of eternity, serve a purpose far greater than we can currently comprehend. This is not an easy truth to accept, especially in the midst of suffering, but it is one that brings a kind of quiet strength. It calls us to trust in a wisdom beyond our own and to consider that pain may not be meaningless even if we do not yet see its meaning. Throughout life, we often discover that some of the most painful seasons become the most formative. In hindsight, the very moments we once wished had never happened can become the turning points that shaped us, softened us, or led us to something better. But while time can sometimes bring clarity, there are other moments where the answers never come, not in this life. This is where the eternal perspective becomes essential. If this life is all there is, then suffering is a cruel interruption. But if this life is only the beginning, then pain may be part of a process that leads to a much greater outcome. The eternal perspective shifts our focus from the temporary to the lasting. It doesn't deny the reality of pain, but places it within a broader narrative. Just as a child undergoing a painful medical procedure may not understand why it's necessary, we too may be unaware of what is being healed, protected, or transformed in the process of our own suffering. The pain is real, but so is the possibility that it is doing something important that we cannot yet grasp. The belief in a good and just God allows us to hold on even when nothing around us makes sense. When we consider eternity, we are reminded that every moment in this life, however difficult, is not the end. There is something beyond, something that redefines what we go through here and now. The promise of restoration, of justice, of healing gives strength to endure. It tells us that evil will not have the last word, that suffering is not the final chapter. We are not abandoned in our pain. We are being prepared for something more. This perspective does not erase grief, but it gives us the courage to live through it. It does not make suffering pleasant, but it makes it purposeful, knowing that there is an eternal plan unfolding, even through sorrow, offers a peace that circumstances cannot take away. It invites us to trust that the hands that allow pain are also the hands that hold eternity, and in that truth, even the deepest wounds begin to find hope. In the face of pain, one of the most powerful and redemptive truths is that suffering can lead us into deeper relationship with God. When life is comfortable and predictable, it's easy to settle into a sense of self-reliance. We begin to believe that we are in control, that we can manage on our own, and that God, while perhaps acknowledged, is not deeply needed. But pain interrupts that illusion. It breaks down the walls of self-sufficiency and exposes our vulnerability. In those moments, we often find ourselves turning to God, not as a last resort, but as the only place where true comfort and meaning can be found. Pain has a way of awakening the soul. It drives the heart to ask deeper questions, to search beyond the surface, to cry out in ways that only desperation can provoke. These cries are not signs of weakness, they are signs of honesty. They are the voice of a soul that realizes it cannot carry its burden alone. And in that honest cry, God meets us. He doesn't always provide immediate answers, but He offers His presence. It is in that presence that we begin to experience a kind of closeness that prosperity never teaches. There is a richness to the relationship with God that forms in the fire of suffering. Faith that has been tested by pain becomes stronger, more genuine, and more enduring. Trust that is forged in difficulty has a depth that comfort cannot produce. When someone walks through the valley of sorrow and still clings to God, still believes in His goodness, still holds on to hope, that faith becomes something profound. It is not built on circumstances, but on a real encounter with a God who does not leave us in our darkest moments. Many of the most intimate prayers come from places of pain. When words fail and tears fall, those moments often become sacred ground, not because they are free of agony, but because they are full of God's nearness. In Scripture, we see this pattern again and again. Job, David, Jeremiah, Paul. These men endured profound suffering, yet their cries, laments, and brokenness became the very pathway to divine communion. Their pain was not ignored by God. It became the context in which He revealed Himself more deeply. Suffering can also deepen our awareness of grace. In pain, we often discover how fragile we truly are. We see our limits, our weakness, our dependency, and yet we are met with compassion, mercy, and strength not our own. This encounter softens the heart and opens it to God in ways that might not be possible when life is easy. It teaches us not only to call on Him, but to walk with Him in trust, even when we do not understand. Pain does not always bring immediate answers, but it often brings us to our knees. And in that place, low, honest, surrendered, we find not just relief, but relationship, not just healing, but a holy closeness that redefines everything we thought we knew about faith and love. So, why does God allow pain? The question doesn't lead us away from Him, it leads us straight to His heart. Pain confronts us with the brokenness of our world, but it also awakens our longing for justice, beauty, and meaning. It reveals that we are not just physical beings, but moral and spiritual ones, created with freedom, shaped by struggle, and drawn into deeper relationship through hardship. Pain can refine us, direct us, and even redeem us, but only if we are willing to see beyond the suffering to the one who walks with us through it. We may never fully understand each moment of pain we face, but the Christian faith does not offer a God who stands at a distance. It offers a God who stepped into history, bore the weight of our suffering, and transformed it into the doorway of hope. On the cross, pain was not erased, but it was given meaning. And in that moment, God didn't just answer our suffering, He entered it. So the question is not only why does God allow pain, but also what will we allow pain to do within us? Will it harden us, or will it lead us closer to the God who still speaks through the storm?